What if the most powerful anti-Western alliance in a generation is built on a lie? On the surface, the partnership between Iran, Russia, and China looks like the dawn of a new world order. You've seen the pictures. Their warships cutting through the Gulf of Oman in joint naval drills. You've heard their leaders at the UN talking about a multipolar world, a world no longer run by the United States. They're busy forging new trade routes, linking their banking systems, and trying to leave the US dollar in the dust. It looks coordinated. It looks formidable. It looks like an ironclad axis of resistance. But behind this curtain of unity lies a fragile house of cards. This isn't an alliance of loyalty or shared destiny. It's a temporary marriage of convenience, a tactical triangle built on one thing: a shared enemy. And as we're about to see, it's an arrangement that's not just flawed, but is already showing signs that it's poised to fracture under its own weight. This is the hidden story of ambition, desperation, and some deep-seated mistrust. Section 1, the Formidable Challenge. To understand the cracks, you first have to appreciate the building. The West's label for this trio, the axis of upheaval, isn't just paranoia. Their cooperation is real, it's growing, and it is a direct challenge to the global order. It's a partnership that's playing out across three key areas: military, economic, and diplomatic. First, the military dimension, the most visible and alarming part. The war in Ukraine put military cooperation between Moscow and Tehran into overdrive. Facing staggering losses, Russia turned to Iran for a lifeline. Iran has delivered thousands of its Shahid drones, which have become a grimly familiar sight over Ukraine, alongside artillery and other tech. But this isn't a one-way street. In return, Russia has offered advanced military hardware, including the possibility of its top-tier Su-35 fighter jets and S-400 air defense systems. This creates a dangerous feedback loop. Iran gets advanced weapons to threaten its neighbors, and Russia gets to keep its war machine running. China's role is quieter, but no less important. While Beijing has become more cautious about direct arms sales, its military partnership continues. The Maritime Security Belt naval exercises, bringing all three navies together, are now a regular event. These aren't just for the cameras. They're a clear signal of growing coordination and a collective show of force in strategic waters, meant to tell Washington that the Persian Gulf is no longer its private lake. Then you follow the money. And the main reason for all of this is sanctions. For decades, the U.S. has used economic sanctions to try and contain Iran and punish Russia. The result wasn't surrender. It was the birth of a parallel sanction-proof economy. China is the undisputed giant here. As the world's biggest oil importer, it's become Iran's economic lifeline, buying up to 90% of Iranian crude, usually at a steep discount. That cash is what keeps Tehran afloat. A core goal for all three is to de-dollarize, to conduct trade in their own currencies and especially the Chinese yuan, bypassing the entire U.S. financial system. They're building new trade routes like the North-South Transport Corridor to connect Russia to the Indian Ocean through Iran, creating supply chains the West can't touch. Groups like the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, SCO, and the expanded BRICS bloc, which Iran has joined, are the new clubs for this economic order. For Iran, this look to the East policy is everything. Finally, there's the diplomatic front. At the United Nations, this trio often votes as a bloc. Russia and China use their Security Council vetoes to shield each other, and Iran from Western pressure. They all talk about a multipolar world, a direct attack on the unipolar moment America has enjoyed since the Cold War. China's move to broker a peace deal between rivals Iran and Saudi Arabia in 2023 was a diplomatic power play, showing Beijing could be a major arbiter in a region long dominated by Washington. Put it all together, the military hardware, the sanction-busting economy, and the diplomatic unity, and you have a real, coherent challenge. Their goal is crystal clear: to erode Western influence and build an alternative world order on their own terms. Section 2, a world remade. So, what if they pull it off? What does a world where this axis actually succeeds look like? In short, It's a world that's more fragmented, more volatile, and a lot less stable. The biggest consequence would be the splintering of the global economy. The US dollar's dominance isn't just for show, it's the bedrock of the global financial system and a pillar of American power. If this bloc successfully de-dollarizes and pulls other countries along, we could see a split system. One part of the world trading in dollars and euros, the other in yuan. This wouldn't just weaken American influence, it would grind sand into the gears of global trade. The West's ability to use sanctions as a foreign policy tool would be crippled. Imagine a world where rogue states and aggressors can fund their operations completely outside the dollar system. The financial guardrails that help maintain stability, imperfect as they are, would be gone. A falling demand for the dollar could also mean higher inflation and borrowing costs back home, hitting everything from mortgages to national debt. Geopolitically, the success of this axis would embolden authoritarian powers everywhere. It sends a message that aggression works. If Russia can withstand sanctions and fight a war in Europe with help from its friends, other countries with territorial ambitions will be taking notes. The Middle East would become a powder keg. A stronger Iran, armed with Russian and Chinese tech and flush with oil money, would be far more assertive in its push for regional dominance. Its network of proxies in Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, and Yemen would be better armed and better funded, dialing up the tension with Israel and Gulf Arab states to 11. In East Asia, a successful partnership with Russia and Iran frees up China to focus on its number one priority, Taiwan. With Russia keeping Europe busy and Iran stirring chaos in the Middle East, American attention and resources would be stretched dangerously thin. This is the strategic nightmare Washington planners worry about, a multi-front crisis that forces impossible choices. This new world would be one where international norms are tossed aside and raw, transactional power politics makes a comeback. It's a return to 19th century great power competition, but supercharged with 21st century weapons. CTA midroll. This is a complex and fast-moving story, and understanding the weaknesses of this alliance is just as important as knowing its strengths. If you're finding this analysis valuable, take a second to subscribe and hit that like button. It really helps the channel keep making deep dive videos that go beyond the headlines. Now let's break down why this powerful-looking axis is, in fact, a fragile house of cards. Section 3, the House of Cards. That image of a unified, anti-Western front? It's brilliant political theater designed to project strength. But when you look behind the curtain, you don't find a foundation of trust. You find a rickety structure, riddled with cracks. This isn't a true strategic alliance. It's a convergence of convenience, and its weaknesses are profound. You can see the fractures in three key places: its lopsided economy, its competing ambitions, and its total lack of a shared vision. First, the economic fragility. For all their talk of a new economic order, their own house is built on a ridiculously unequal foundation. This isn't a partnership of equals. China's economy is a behemoth that absolutely dwarfs Russia's and Iran's combined. This creates a relationship of crushing dependency, not partnership. Iran sells most of its oil to China, not because it wants to, but because it has to. It's forced to sell it at a sanctioned special discount that helps Beijing far more than Tehran. Russia, cut off from Europe, is now in the same boat, desperate for Chinese customers. This gives Beijing massive leverage. While Russia and Iran need China to survive, China has plenty of other places to buy its energy. This dependency is already causing friction. That much-hyped 25-year, $400 billion deal between China and Iran? Years after it was signed, Chinese investment has barely trickled in. Chinese companies are wary of U.S. sanctions and Iran's internal instability. To make matters worse, Russia and Iran are now direct competitors, both trying to sell their discounted oil to the same markets in Asia. Second, beyond the money, their geopolitical goals often clash. They're united against the West, but their regional ambitions are often in conflict. Look at Central Asia, a region Russia has always considered its backyard. China's Belt and Road Initiative is steadily turning it into Beijing's backyard, with massive investments that Moscow can't hope to match. They are quiet rivals competing for the top spot. There's also a deep historical mistrust, especially between Russia and Iran, built on centuries of Russian expansion at Persia's expense. Tehran knows Moscow is opportunistic and could easily sell them out for a better deal with the West. Finally, and most fundamentally, this is an alliance without a soul. It's defined entirely by what it's against: American power, sanctions, democracy, not what it's for. There's no shared positive vision. China's one-party state, Russia's authoritarian kleptocracy, and Iran's Islamic theocracy have almost nothing in common ideologically. But the ultimate proof of this fragility, the smoking gun, is the complete absence of a mutual defense clause. This is not NATO. An attack on one is not an attack on all. We've seen this tested. During past escalations, Iran has learned this lesson the hard way. Its so-called partners offered little more than statements calling for restraint. There were no game-changing weapons shipments, no direct intervention, nothing to suggest a real alliance. In fact, Iranian officials have openly expressed their frustration with the lukewarm support. One perfect example of this friction is the drone deal. After Iran supplied Russia with thousands of drones for Ukraine, Moscow turned around, reverse-engineered the technology, started producing its own, better versions, and has reportedly been slow to pay Tehran for the original deal. This reveals the core truth. Both Moscow and Beijing are happy to use Iran as a pawn to distract and bleed American resources, but they have no intention of getting dragged into a major war on Iran's behalf. Their support goes right up to the point where it becomes a liability to their own interests and not an inch further. Conclusion. So, is the Iran-Russia-China axis a genuine threat or a paper tiger? The reality is it's a bit of both. The coordination is real and their actions pose a serious challenge. But the internal contradictions, the economic dependency on China, the competing regional goals, and the lack of any real ideological glue make it an inherently unstable construct. This is not a monolithic block. It's a temporary overlap of three self-interested agendas. Its survival depends almost entirely on continued pressure from the West. If that pressure eases, or if the costs of the partnership start to outweigh the benefits for any one member, the whole thing could unravel with surprising speed. The no limits partnership has very clear limits, and we're already seeing them. The great game of geopolitics is always in motion, and this fragile house of cards will face many more tests in the years ahead. What do you think is the biggest weakness of this alliance? Is it the economic imbalance, the historical mistrust, or something else? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching.